I am Miss Lucy Saunders and I'm an art teacher, and this is guidance for AS level art and design. So guidance for Unit 1, Personal Creative Investigation. So an overview of the whole A level is that it is made up of 3 units. The AS makes up the first unit, so Unit 1, PCE, Personal Creative Inquiry, which is a non-exam assessment, and it's worth 40% of your overall qualification. I will come back to this in a bit more detail in a moment, but that is the specification from the exam board. So if you want to have a more detailed read through of that, just pause here and have a look. But we will talk about it a little bit more. It mostly focuses on the fact that it is critical, practical and theoretical. So you are required to select and evaluate and present your work for assessment. And your inquiry is determined by you and your teacher, assessed by your teacher, and then externally moderated by the exam board moderators. There's no time limit, so the duration is determined by your centre, and can be the whole of Year 12 effectively, often. So then going into Year 13, usually the A-level A2, Unit 2, is called Personal Investigation, also a non-exam assessment, 36% of your qualification. So this has 2 integrated parts. One is a project, again, similar in not length, but perhaps content or structure to what you will do in AS. But there is also an extended written element of 1,000 words minimum. I'm not going to focus on this too much, but it's just good to have an overview of what you will be looking at next year as well. And then the final project is the externally set assignment, Unit 3, which is also a non-exam assessment and is worth 24% of your overall qualification. So there isn't an exam element of your art A-level. So there isn't going to be a time when you're in the hall and given an exam paper that you've never seen before and tested on something in that way. The ESA has a preparatory study period, which is where you will be doing all of the process that I'll be discussing in a moment, the same as you will for the other projects, trying to hit those assessment objectives. But you also have a 15-hour period of sustained focused work. Sometimes people use the language of exam for that section. It isn't an exam, but it is supervised in your centre, perhaps by a teacher or an invigilator. It will be set up slightly differently in different places. And it is over a period of days. You don't have to do 15 hours in one go. And you will be usually making the final piece for the project that you've been preparing until then. So all 3 units are a project from initial ideas to a resolved outcome. They have slightly different dynamics involved and requirements involved, but they all allow you to practice the creative process, develop your skills, and all of the things that go in towards becoming an artist. So to recap, there are 3 units, AS, Unit 1, and then 2 units in A-level. This video is going to be focusing on guidance for AS. So to go back to that language from the exam board, the Personal Creative Inquiry, so this is AS, Unit 1, consists of an extended exploratory project or portfolio and outcome or outcomes based on themes and subject matter which are personal and meaningful to the learner, to you. The inquiry must integrate critical, practical and theoretical work. So there is occasionally a misconception that if you can create an outstanding, in terms of technical skill, piece of artwork, then that will equate to a high grade at our A-level. And whilst, of course, that is rewarded by the mark scheme, you need the critical and theoretical elements integrated with that practical work in order to hit the assessment objectives, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. So it is an extended exploratory project. You'll be working on it for the whole of AS. There will be a journey from beginning to end. It could change in the middle. Your ideas might develop differently than you imagine at the beginning, and evidencing all of that is what your project is. The words personal and meaningful are really important as well, and also I think a really exciting and enriching part of doing AS and A-level art, that you get to explore something that matters to you. You get to show off something that you are proud of. You get to find out more about something that you're interested in and see what happens if you use a certain medium in a certain way. You are academically challenging yourself, but also, in my opinion, really nourishing yourself and allowing you to, fulfill that side of things. So thinking about so perhaps this might sound a little bit overwhelming, but I am hoping that it doesn't, in that you may have a couple of other subjects that you are studying at AS that are quite different. They might be quite exam-led, they might be quite content-led. So there is a certain content that you have to learn, and everybody's learning the same thing. Art will allow you, it should complement those other subjects in that the work, you have lots of time to prepare, even for the sustained time in year 13. You are able to do something that is meaningful to you. You are encouraged and in fact need to do something that is meaningful to you. So really try to enjoy it and not find it overwhelming, but find it, a really exciting outlet during this time. A-levels can be quite an overwhelming couple of years. And I really believe that art is something that can really enrich you in that time. So I hope that you think so too. Okay, so those assessment objectives that I've referred to a couple of times have the same titles as they will have done for your GCSE. So if you're somebody that's done a GCSE in Wales with the same exam board, you will perhaps be quite used to these. If you've not done GCSE or you've done something elsewhere, then they might be new to you. So to recap, they are Assessment Objective 1, Critical Understanding. Assessment Objective 2, Creative Making. Assessment Objective 3, Reflective Recording. And Assessment Objective 4, Personal Presentation. So those are not standalone assessment objectives. It isn't that you do one piece of work that addresses AO1, another for AO2. They interweave, as does the creative process. Most things that you do will address 2 or 3 or all of the assessment objectives. And although they are the same or very similar titles, AOs, to your GCSE project, of course, this is now advanced level. There's much more depth, and the expectation of what you are creating is obviously now further on than what you were creating during GCSE. So a little recap on the creative process, although by now you are probably quite aware of what that involves. Now that you are an AS artist, you are becoming more advanced. So there are lots of different ways of approaching creating anything, but the general loosely agreed approach of a creative process is that you start with initial project ideas, move on to some specific research, try out your informed artwork, and then refine and plan and develop, and then perhaps loop back to some more research because you realise actually you don't have enough context or enough photography, or you're not quite sure how to draw from that angle because you haven't looked at it enough, so you need to go back and do a bit more of that, try out a few more things, refine and plan again. And all of that can go round until you are filtering down to your final outcome. So that is the same process that you will approach your AS with. So this is going to be a series of 4 videos to guide you on your AS studies. Video 1, which is this video, Getting Started, Theme Selection and Project Planning. Video 2, Contextual References and Artist Studies. And video 3, Photography and Observational Artwork. And video 4, Development to Final Piece. Now, you don't necessarily need to watch these videos in order, although this one as the first video makes the most sense because it is about getting started. You might start by taking photographs and then go back and look at your artists. It is not prescribed, certainly not by the exam board and not by most art teachers either. The order you do these in can suit you. This is the order that I tend to work in, so that is why I have ordered them in this way, but please feel free to dip in and out of them as suits. So this is video 1, and the general outcomes we are aiming for are to perhaps not have made the decisions, but to have considered and started to understand your theme, medium and artist selection, looked at a project proposal sheet that I've created, thought about where you could visit, thought about what mediums you will experiment with, and how to show those. So it could be mind maps, initial ideas pages, contextual research pages. Okay, so your theme may have been given to you by your teacher. Some teachers might give you an umbrella theme, so like an overarching, quite broad theme, and you can then specify within that what you would like to further explore. You may have been given no theme at all and completely able to choose for yourself. Or perhaps your teacher has given you a more prescribed theme, but even within that, you're going to be able to make it your own in order to fulfill those words from the exam board of personal and meaningful. So what is your project about? You might not know yet, that's fine. From there, you'll need to do some research. So what sources have you looked at? Where have you visited? Visiting somewhere in real life is a really, really important way to address becoming an AS and A-level artist. Standing in front of something, experiencing something is very, very different to looking at it through a screen. So although there are, of course, going to be some limitations on travel or on expenses of going places, there will almost definitely be something you can go and see in your local area. Your school or college might organise a trip, in which case go on it. That would be brilliant. There are galleries certainly in any city, if you live in a city or if you live near enough to a city. And in most smaller towns and villages, there are galleries. Go to them. Become somebody that pops into a gallery if that's where you're going. I have, throughout my art education and art teaching career, dragged all of my family and friends into every gallery I go past. And don't be put off by thinking that you need to spend, all day there or anything like that. You can go in for 5 minutes. You could go in and decide you don't like anything and leave. That's fine, as long as you're polite about it. The people that run galleries are often really excited to speak to art students about the work they're doing. So go in, ask people questions, ask if you can take photographs. Sometimes you can't, but often you can. Find out what you can, see what you like, see what you don't like. At this stage, just looking at things on Google is not going to allow you to access the higher end of the marks or allow you to enjoy learning about art in the way that you deserve to. As well as that, you need to be able to put things into context, and those kinds of visits will really help you with that. Artists don't exist in isolation, and neither does their artwork. So where someone is from, what was going on politically at the time they were making the work, what was going on globally, what was going on personally for them, all of those things help to put their artwork into context, and you will want to do the same for yours. And then the final decision is how you will communicate this to your teacher and to your examiner. So there is no prescribed way to do that. As I've mentioned before, you don't have to use a sketchbook or boards or a website. You can, in terms of the exam board, you can do that however you would like to. Your teacher or school may have a way that they suggest that you present and communicate your work, but be creative. There's a fine line between over presenting to the point where it distracts from your work. So if you spend hours and hours and hours painting every page of your sketchbook but haven't actually put any artwork on there or any writing on there, then of course that is going to be detrimental to your time. But if you are able to use presentation devices that reflect your ideas and help to further communicate your visual understanding of the arts, then that is excellent, because that is what this is all about, and you're going to therefore communicate your sophistication more easily. So when you're deciding what your theme might be, a good way to start is to write down all the subjects, themes, places, things, activities, or issues that are personally relevant and matter to you. So there's that word again, personal. Everyone has interesting things around them, and you might think, no, I don't. I bet you do. Ask the people that you live with. Have a look on the walk you take your dog on every morning, or your bus journey to college, or at the clothes you wear and the visual choices you make. Maybe you have a hobby or a skill or an animal or something going on that is interesting. Maybe it's visually interesting. It has an interesting texture, or maybe it's not that visually interesting but has an amazing story behind it. There's no one way to do this. The purpose of artwork is to share a message, to comment or scream or sing about the world we live in. If there is no emotional connection behind the work, it is difficult to create personal and meaningful artwork. So there's those words again. Number 2, don't be afraid to include topics that are unusual and challenging and controversial and gritty, those that fill you with passion. Your school or college might have limitations on what is appropriate for you to create in the school setting. So you will, of course, need to speak to your teacher about that. There is a limit to how much controversy is able to be conveyed in a project like this. But find out what that limit is. Ask your teacher. If you've got an idea, talk about it and see if there is a way that you can explore it. Students who select substantial, heartfelt issues that they really care about are much more likely to achieve great results and enjoy their work. Eliminate those that you don't feel are meaningful. So you've made this big list, go through and, circle the ones that are meaningful, leave the ones that aren't. Don't destroy them, leave that there as evidence to your teacher and examiner that you had those ideas and you've come through that journey, but then refine it into more meaningful, more interesting, more exciting ideas that you're going to take forward. Be careful of overly pretty project ideas. So that doesn't mean something beautiful can't be successful. Just be careful not to do something just because it looks nice. Meaningful tends to need more than that. Eliminate subjects that you cannot explore firsthand. So as I mentioned about going to a gallery, particularly as as an AS and then going into A-level student, there is some space at GCSE where you might have used images that were secondary sources, or at AS you really need to be looking at the thing that you want to draw and make art from and really being able to visit it and photograph it and work from it. So remember that you're likely need to return to it to draw, photograph or experience it firsthand. Okay, so most of the rest of the video now will be me giving you an example of how you might develop a project idea. Please be aware I am not suggesting that this is the project or a project that you should develop. What I'm trying to show you here is how I, as an artist, not even so much really as a teacher, would develop a project of my own, so that you can understand that process and then perhaps mirror something similar about your own ideas. So please be mindful of that when you're listening to the next little bit. So I really like quotes and reading and poems and lyrics and words to inspire my artwork. This is a project that I have developed in my own personal practice. And this is sort of me trying to document how I would get to that point. So this is a quote that I found about the passing of time that I thought was quite beautiful. And every day we shall have less and then none. So this idea that our time is running out is something that I'm really interested in. So I started to think, okay, if this is my quote that I'm beginning my project from, who else has created work about that idea? So there was an artist who had Alzheimer's, so his memory was fading with the disease, and he created art of his own face as his memory faded. So this is me just sort of putting all my ideas in one place. I've put the link, excuse me, to the website that shows that work on this page. And then on the right, there is an artist, Anya Galaccio, whose work I've seen in real life in Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery. And she puts flowers here, for example, she's used poppies behind a piece of perspex or glass or plastic and leaves them there, allows them to sort of decay. So you can see on the first image, they're nice and red and the stalks are quite green, and then they decay and decay. And then that closer up images of them once they have gone sort of brown and the colour has gone from them. So this idea that time is passing, and she's documenting that in her artwork. So although at this stage I certainly haven't decided what it is my art is going to look like, I'm starting to pull together things that relate to the idea I've had. So I've got a quote and I've got two artists so far. And then I thought, okay, time. Salvador Dali is an artist you might have come across before, and he often featured clocks in his work, and then they had a lot of his surrealist work has a lot of symbolism to do with time and dreams and things like that. So I had a little look at his work. This is an artist I found called Adam Lupton. So these are all just Google search images. And he sort of captures one moment in one image. So sorry, multiple moments in one image. So someone moving a lot sort of within the same image. So almost like time is passing, but within the still, which I thought was really interesting. This is a student art piece from someone that I used to teach. Obviously a person that is older, the time has passed slightly and you can see it in the skin and things like that. So that's just visually very interesting. This piece again is a student that painted it, and it makes me think of the passing of the seasons. You've got flowers and things and the passing of time throughout nature. So then I thought, okay, I've looked at a few different bits. That's how you get started. Maybe it's on PowerPoint, maybe it is, you cut and stick things. However you want to work is up to you. Like I said before, I'm just demonstrating my process. So then I put things together on one slide, my own response to this theme so far. So I started thinking about the passing of time, and I started thinking about, so I did make this artwork. This was the beginning of a project I did make, and it was about the passing of time and female beauty standards and what that might look like in a piece of artwork. And I found this artist, whose name I think will come up in a moment. There we go, Emma Leone Palmer, and she created these paintings of women covering their face in multicolored paints. And the idea being it's sort of a play on women covering their face in makeup. And this idea that aging and time passing and how women react to that. So in response to this, I also found another quote. As I said, I really like words. We melt, and finally we are extinguished, by Zadie Smith. So then to further this, I started taking photographs of myself as my sort of subject matter. And then I sort of put things together on a mood board. So I've got a drawing I did from the photograph, so that's a pencil drawing of me, and then a little drawing on the other side of a candle that's been extinguished, like the quote. So although it's words that are beginning this project, quite quickly they're becoming visuals. So I've got photographs I've taken, a drawing I've done, and another drawing I've done. I've narrowed that quote down a bit to the bit that really is the most meaningful. And then I started to Google, so I've done a little Google search and I've just screen grabbed it there at the bottom. About what beauty standards are. So you're starting to add meaning, and I've thought about adding some blue splashes to the background because I think I really like the idea that this artist used blue paint. So starting to pull together all of these ideas. Then you can fill out your specialising proposal. So this is just a sheet that brings everything together. You don't have to use this exact format, but putting everything onto one page is a really useful way to get your ideas together. So thinking about the theme you'd like to base your project on. So if we were talking about the project that I just sort of demonstrated, the theme I've decided to base my project on is the passing of time, in particular, thinking about how this affects women in our society. And then the artists I'd like to learn from, well, I've got the artist, just go back a second, I can't remember her name. We will go all the way back. Emma Leone Palmer is my first artist. And then from the other slide, I had Anya Galluccio, who is the artist that does the flowers. And then I've got a few quotes from different people. So there, I've already, as I'm starting to sort of just thinking about this out loud, I've realised I don't have enough artists yet. So that would be what I would need to do next. So you could speak to your teacher, you can Google, you can go to the library. You can, like I said, go to galleries and find artists that really inform your ideas. Okay. The next thing you will need to think about is what your artwork might be. And what's really nice about the PCE is that you have an extended amount of time to explore. It isn't that you need to very quickly produce artwork. You have time and need to demonstrate the exploration of your ideas. So these next two slides are lists of different techniques that you could try. Certainly these aren't extensive. This isn't every technique you could possibly try, but there are quite a lot here. And I've copied and pasted this from the Student Art Guide, which is a brilliant website if you haven't had a look at it. Please do, it's really, really helpful. So there are, it says tools and technologies, sculptural materials, threads and textiles. And then there's drawing and painting surfaces and drawing and painting media. So even the surface you're working onto is a choice. You know, you get to explore what paper you use or what surface in general you use. So here it just says, I'll read a few: coloured and textured papers of varying weights, tissue paper, watercolour paper, newsprint, cartridge, to skip down a little bit, dried textures created with acrylic pastes or compounds, canvas, hessian, or other appropriated items. Maybe ask the people that you live with to save envelopes, or, you know, if you have an interesting discarded something around the house, ask if it's okay if you draw onto that, see what happens when you do. It might not work, or it might be amazing. And then within that, the other choice you're making is what you're drawing or painting with. So graphite pencils, spray paint, food dye, crayons, drawing ink, printing ink. There are so many things that you can use to explore your ideas. So the next element of this project is to really start to play with different mediums and, as I said, surfaces and ways of creating artwork. So a really important part of the assessment objectives is that you do that. And how you want to do that is, again, as I've said lots of times, it is up to you. So the next steps are to experiment with a range of media and surfaces and techniques, but with your theme in mind. So going back to that theme example that I gave you, skin is something that's going to be really important from that project. So the girl was rubbing blue into her skin, maybe thinking about different textures of skin and trying to draw that with different, or create that with different types of surfaces is somewhere that I could go with that. It doesn't need to be completely obvious. You don't necessarily have to draw a face because you're thinking about faces. You might refine this later on and you might sort of tighten up again and do something a lot more fixed after this stage. But this part is about showing all the different skills and techniques you know how to do, all ones that you don't know how to do and you're going to figure it out. Ask your teacher, ask if you have a technician in your school or college, or go on YouTube. There are so many tutorials of how to do most things. And during this section, make notes, take photographs, and document your process as you go. What works, what doesn't, what is amazing, and you think that is going to be the thing that's going to help me fulfill this idea, and what do you think, oh no, that didn't work at all, but still document that bit. So as I have said, this is a suggested way of working through this PCE, personal creative inquiry, and there are lots of different ways of approaching it, but the general bits that are universal are that you need an idea and you need to decide how you're going to make it personal and meaningful, and then what it is that you're going to be making within that. Yes, I think that's everything for this video. Okay, so there are going to be 3 more videos to guide you with this, and as I said, you can dip in and out of them as you go, and use them as you will, and I really hope they help. Okay, thank you for listening.